So recently, these street interviews have been going quite viral. Let's take a look, shall we?
Read the index card.
You think I can't read? She wear a stiletto. Oh, okay. Refund.
Mitch, what, nigga? I don't know that word though.
Sound it out.
Meta solution.
Read the index card.
The Diety had a promotion of the impending catastrophic event.
Read the index card.
Their relationship.
Okay, well, I think it may genuinely be over. I'm just kidding. And I know it's very important to be careful with these videos, especially these street interviews, where I think a lot of the time they're designed to rage bait you and to sort of fulfill your fantasy that society is collapsing and ending, and, that may or may not be true, but this is really bad. But no, I get that it's extremely easy to dunk on these people and get on your intellectual high horse because you can pronounce the word silhouette. And of course want to nuke the entire generation, but there's clearly a much deeper problem being elucidated here. I looked into some data, and this particular statistic was a little disconcerting to say the least. According to the National Literary Institute, in 2025, roughly 21% of American adults classified as functionally illiterate. On top of that, only 30% of US 4th to 8th graders score at proficient reading levels. Is this as harrowing as it sounds, or am I just being a pretentious asshole? Per usual, both. Shall we, my darlings? I think we can attribute a large degree of the literacy crisis to the massive lifestyle shift that most of us underwent during COVID, especially amongst the younger generations. Daily screen time went up almost 70%, which had quite a bit to do with being online for school and communicating on online platforms because of the lockdowns. But I think that waking up and immediately opening your computer ultimately primed and programmed an entire generation to associate life with screen time. And with TikTok and all of its evils on the rise, we nearly all became addicted to consuming audio and visual content on the internet, rendering written words obsolete. Speaking of which, the technology on these phones and computers, like text-to-speech, Google Translate, speech-to-text, and even something as seemingly innocuous as autocorrect, are so unbelievably effective that it's probably possible to never have to read or write anything ever again. Believe it or not, this is actually the exact story of Alicia Ortiz, an honors student who graduated from Connecticut High School in 2025, who claims to not know how to read or write, who is now suing the Hartford Board of Education and city officials, accusing them of quote-unquote negligence in failing to provide adequate special education services throughout her schooling. I wonder if she got ChatGPT to write that for her. I mean, there's a ton to break down here. For students with learning disabilities, this technology is probably highly beneficial, but for a supposed education system to incentivize Alicia to use said technology just to succeed within it, now she's a 19-year-old who's incapable of reading or writing. Then there's the argument that the school system is severely underfunded, which I don't doubt to be the case, but to me, that's just not an adequate excuse, because I'm sure this shit is going on at 30 grand a year private schools too. And also, I'm just not a fan of that argument like, oh, if I don't go to the most prestigious school, I won't be able to read and I'm destined to be retarded. It's like, come on guys. But if that is the excuse of these school systems, why wouldn't all of the kids just use technology to take shortcuts to get good grades? Like, at that point, cheating and cutting corners is the most efficient way to attain academic success. When I was in high school a decade ago, I was lucky enough to be exposed to all kinds of incredible classic literary works by Dostoevsky, Homer, Aldous Huxley, and the list goes on. But even then, I couldn't help but be tantalized by the sweet shortcuts that SparkNotes could supply me, and me and all of my classmates used it. SparkNotes essentially just told you the plot points of whatever book you were reading at a 3rd grade reading level. And although it made it much easier to get a decent grade on a paper, your legitimate ability to comprehend what you were reading was nearly non-existent. I mean, I can't even fathom how ChatGPT and AI have shifted the entire educational paradigm. Recently, there's been multiple instances of commencement speakers at university graduations advocating for AI, and the statements have been met with resounding boos from the Gen Z graduates, which obviously has to do with the growing fear that AI will take away jobs from the college graduates.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution.
Quick side note, why does it seem like so many boomers have such an affinity for AI? They're like, AI is going to be the future.
AI is going to touch everything else as well.
And it's like, yeah, it is, but like, you're just so, like, you're so infatuated with it. It's hilarious. Anyway, it is a fact that AI will take your job. But how many of those same kids who are booing AI used it to write essays, solve equations, and program, etc.? I feel like AI taking over is inevitable for this exact reason. It's like a substance that serves you exponentially that you love until it begins to take your life away from you, when you knew good and well that this was the inevitable conclusion of this discordantly harmonious partnership. But I think because of how convenient AI makes school or work and occasionally even life, most people will just give in and take their use of it to the furthest extent as long as it still benefits them. And as a result, AI will eventually become so advanced and adjacent to humans in its behavior, we will be completely replaced and disposable unless we decide to literally merge with the technology, and most of us will just willingly let it happen. I may be wrong, who knows. The most pertinent issue of the literacy crisis in my eyes is something I like to call the comprehension crisis. We live in the information age, where there's such an excess of it, most of it is propaganda or is some kind of political spin on it, and we're inundated with it constantly, but very few people actually understand a thing that they're reading or consuming. Writing in general has almost been comically dumbed down to meet the bar of the modern American, and whenever I read a news article, I'm like, I genuinely believe that this is written for the mind of a third grader on purpose, because when writing is oversimplified, instead of being nuanced, thought-provoking, or complex, it becomes advertising for an ideology or a political party that ultimately is there to prey on your emotions and sway you in whatever direction of hatred you prefer, or confirm your pre-existing biases about the world, and wrap you up in this inherently divisive media and political ecosystem. And look, I'm not advocating for writing to become overtly edgy and flowery pseudo-intellectual nonsense that sounds intelligent but really isn't at all, that we're seeing more and more on Substack, but all of the current writing I see is so crude and flat, and most importantly, it tells you what to think through headlines and shitty slogans. So is this plague possible to cure? Yes. My solution is to learn with the highest form of art, fiction. And sorry, booktok girlies, I'm not talking about Morning Glory Milking Farm, but I'm talking about the classics. As I was saying, when I was in high school, there were so many incredible books that were assigned to me over the years that I semi-read, but I never read for my own leisure for the entire duration of my high school experience. And there's a reason for that. Growing up, I was an avid reader, but when I got to high school, to put it simply, reading was uncool and gay. That's what the sociologists won't tell you. But unfortunately, it's true, and I can't even fathom how much more prevalent that truth is amongst the youth in 2026. Especially when the youth are looking up to streamers like Rakai, who is genuinely illiterate.
But it can all spark to make a strong artwork.
Kai Cenat, who's not too far behind him, and Marlin, who's never said anything of remote coherence throughout his entire career. Dumbing down your speech to seem more nonchalant, mumbling, and speaking in unintelligible phrases is what's currently cool, and it was the same back in my day. For men and women, we just do it in different ways. For men and boys, I think that notion can be perfectly embodied by this video. That big ass. And for women, it's the, no, like literally clock it. It was giving tea boots down. Which, by the way, all this is just a bastardization of African American vernacular. But speaking and communicating in this manner gives us a convenient way out of ever being labeled as dumb or cringe, either through contrived nonchalance or faux irony. By the way, I quite like both of those expressions, but it's like, speak fucking English. I think this actually plays a huge role in the loneliness crisis and people generally feeling disconnected from each other and themselves. If we haven't achieved some degree of proficiency in our language, how the fuck do we expect to be able to communicate with other people? I see it all the time where people are trying to communicate an idea or open up or express an emotion, and they literally just don't have the words in their head to express it. And I think this has caused most people to be extremely surface level in their conversations, and as a result, people have a very difficult time creating deep bonds. This may sound trivial, but when you not only have a language barrier with the people in your life, but a language barrier with your own mind, it becomes nearly impossible to be your authentic self, and instead, you just adopt the common language and ideas of the time, which right now are not the human race's best work. And I think this point goes out to everyone, but especially to the so-called readers of our generation. I already mentioned booktok stories about sucking off minotaurs, but I would be remiss to talk about the boys who are reading self-help books about how to command the room as the top CEO in the world, and of course the dreaded modern philosophy bro who doesn't even read any philosophy but just watches videos about it. I'm telling you man, the vast majority of those books are just spoon-feeding you exactly what you want to hear and validating your fantasies for both men and women in immensely digestible language. But fiction. When I got to college, I was tired of my limited vocabulary, overall lack of knowledge, and kind of communicating my thoughts like a retard. I was lost and alone. I still am, by the way. I'm just kidding. The following year, my best friend gave me a Charles Bukowski novel, and my life completely changed. Reading a story about such a deplorable yet relatable person forever radically shifted my perspective on storytelling and narrative. My vocabulary easily quadrupled in size, and I was exposed intimately to an era of the past in such an honest yet brutal way. This led me on a journey of trying to consistently read fiction ever since then. And these stories have taken me across the world, all through time, have given me unbridled access to so much of the human experience that I think is sometimes only possible to convey within the medium of writing. And also, here's the big one. Growing up, I was always under the impression that modern humans were far different, and in a lot of ways had evolved past the humans of history. And when you read fiction, I mean, you can go back to nearly any era and throughout every time and place, and it's like, we're all kind of the same, and we always have been. We've been struggling with the same plight and experiencing fulfillment in a nearly identical manner. Granted, most of these stories aren't particularly joyous, but once again, that's changed my perspective on humanity. Or at least has allowed me to understand human nature far more effectively, and has paradoxically made me quite more empathetic, even though I'm still kind of a judgmental piece of shit. But I'm working on it, I promise. This knowledge doesn't necessarily make it easier to exist, and certainly won't cure you of all of your ills. But if I hadn't read these books, once again, I would be extremely low in the overall empathy department, which I think is what we see more and more amongst the current populace. It seems like today, no one can see or relate to anything other than their own experience. This lack of empathy has not only created a current world of genuinely hateful and solipsistic people, but it's also caused our most popular art mediums to become preachy political culture war slop, because that's what illiteracy causes you to think a story or a song is. It's something that needs to cater to you, your views, and your tenuous concepts of morality that have been shaped by shallow ideas of right and wrong and good and evil we've all been programmed with since early childhood. Without literacy, empathy is truly impossible to achieve. Goodness, I'm gay. Lastly, if you want to cure your attention span, a book is all you need, and that's coming from a phone addict, unfortunately. Read some fiction, people. I can't tell you how real it is. I think it's also extremely important to remember that you need to synthesize your reading and the knowledge you've gained from it with your life experience. Experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play. Thanks for that one, Immanuel Kant. Just to wrap up here, reading and expanding your vocabulary isn't for pretentious means. When I was younger and the extent of my vernacular was, you know what I'm saying, I was highly incapable of analyzing my own thoughts and feelings because frankly, I didn't have the words to articulate them. But the more words you have in your arsenal serve you incredibly well when it comes to self-reflection and allow you to access your mind and your true self in a way you never would think to be possible. And that sentiment is unequivocally amplified in relationships. I mean, if any young parents or just parents in general are watching this, your ability to show and teach your children about the classics and communicate with them effectively and articulately may deter them from Cocomelon forever. Anyway, are we really in a literacy crisis? And if so, does it actually matter? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I love you all. Good night, my darlings. Bye-bye.